All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Thursday, November 21st, and this is your daily fix of your Texas Longhorns right here on All in Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson along with Jake Jimerson, and we had a little bit of a conversation before this episode, and I'm already fired up, man. I don't know why. I just kind of got my blood pumping a little bit talking about Texas' season, all the complaints and all the issues that the national media is telling other people to talk about on Twitter and have conversations in terms of strengths of schedules and things like that. Like, look, at the end of the day, and we'll get into the episode, trust me, this is not what the episode is going to be about, but I'll go through just a snippet of what we were talking about is in terms of a Tennessee or an Alabama or an Ole Miss, basically bitching about Texas's schedule and how weak it is. Well, guess what? Beat Arkansas. Texas beat them. Well, beat Vanderbilt. Texas beat them. Well, beat Kentucky. We see that this weekend, and Texas will likely win that game. Those are three teams that those three fan bases, their teams have lost to already this season. If you don't like it, win the games. Win the games.
Well, and also, all we've heard from these same fan bases year in, year out is the argument back to SEC fans has always been your conference is carried by Alabama and Georgia, then the occasional Auburn or LSU who has the one-off year. And then all these fan bases go, no, the SEC's a grind from top to bottom. And then Texas gets in the SEC. They only draw Georgia. They don't draw Bama or Tennessee or some of these other teams. And all of a sudden, the SEC's not a gauntlet.
Yeah.
It's literally the meme of, I thought they were supposed to be SEC. Like it is that meme playing out because sure enough, Texas gets in the SEC. They're following up a great season last year with another great season so far this year. And all of a sudden it's because of their schedule again. And I don't really care. It's not Texas's fault. OU decided to suck this year. It's not Texas's fault. Michigan decided to not be as good as they were supposed to be, which by the way, Indiana's best win is a close game against Michigan. And everyone's saying, why is Indiana behind Texas? Well, Indiana's strength of schedules in like the 80s. Texas is in the 30s. I don't really care about all this because at the end of the day, Texas has one loss. And if they end the year with one loss or in the regular season with one loss, it's all going to sort itself out. And that's what Texas needs to be focused on is winning these last two games. And I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm just not interacting with these people that are doing this because there's just no point. They're not going to change their mind. They're not going to listen to reason. And they're not going to cave to the fact that they have claimed the SEC was this big grind for a decade. And now all of a sudden it's not a grind anymore.
Right. Just it happened to be this one year that it's not a grind. Oh, yeah, by the way, there's 7 ranked teams in the SEC, which is by far the most of any conference. And now, yes, Texas hasn't really played many of those teams other than Georgia, but still, it's a grind. It's still a very good conference, and Texas is running the table right now, and they control their own destiny within said conference. So anyway, let's get into the conversation. Let's get into the episode at hand that we have scheduled for you. I hope you enjoyed that first 3.5 minutes of this episode because we're going to move away from national perspective college football playoff talk. Nothing changed in terms of Texas, in terms of the latest polls. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into Kentucky, Texas by the numbers. We're going to kind of break down what Kentucky's strengths are compared to their weaknesses and how Texas matches up very well against those. The keys to victory today between Jake and I for Texas to have success on Saturday, and then we'll give our final predictions of the game on Thursday because in tomorrow's episode, we are planning on doing an immediate reaction episode. Now, we might do a little something. It depends on how we feel. We want to also do an around the NCAA episode like we typically do on Fridays along with our predictions for the Texas game. But instead, we're doing an immediate reaction. Maybe if we're up to it, and I'm just throwing this on Jake right now, we do an immediate reaction. We post that one right after the game on Thursday night. We go ahead and record Friday's episode and do another 30 minutes of Around the League. Again, I just threw that at Jake. He has no time to think about it. That is something that just went through my head, and I just said it out loud. We don't know if that's going to happen, but maybe not. Anyway, Jake, Texas, Kentucky by the numbers. Fun fact I wanted to let everybody know. I did a little bit of research on a very slow part of my day-to-day at work. And I don't know if anybody knows this, but Texas is the only team in the top 25 meaning the entire country because no unranked team is going to have this stat, has 7 players with at least 20 receptions, 200 yards receiving, and a touchdown this year. And now that's impressive because you're counting on tight ends, you're counting on wide receivers, and both running backs to have those numbers for you to have 7 players with 20 or more catches, 200 or more receiving yards, and at least a receiving touchdown. So anybody who's concerned about the passing game or passing numbers or who your number one is, Quinn is distributing the ball very well amongst the team, and they're the only team in the country to have those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a shocker to me if you told me at the start of the year Gunnar Helm was going to be leading the team in yards this late. I probably would have been a little concerned, but now when I look at it, I'm really not that surprised because there are a lot of mouths to feed. My only complaint would maybe be Isaiah Bond should probably touch the ball a little bit more than he has because he is the best and most explosive player at the wide receiver position for Texas.
He's been a little banged up from time to time.
Yes, being banged up is part of that. He was seeing the ball a little bit more earlier in the year. Since he's been banged up, it's been on and off. But maybe we'll start to see that these last couple games. He's someone they're going to need to play big down the stretch and maybe take over that leading receiver spot. But at the same time, when you have a Matthew Golden, Wingo as well, even though he's a freshman, Gunnar Helm can have big games. And just an assortment of receivers to spread the ball to. DeAndre Moore, like every receiver's felt like they've had at least one game where they've shown out as the star in that game. Golden's had those games, Wingo's had those games, DeAndre Moore's had some of those games, and Bond has had some of those games, and obviously Gunnar Helm has had a couple as well. So it's been pretty impressive to see.
You've even had a Jaden Blue lead the team in receiving for a game, So you've seen it from every position, and you've seen it throughout the season in different games. So that was just a little fun fact. I was bored at work, and I was like, I was looking at Texas' leading receiver, and I said, Gunnar Helm's the leading receiver, huh? And then I kind of looked down the rest of them. I said, wow, it's pretty evenly distributed throughout the players on offense. Let me compare what these other teams look like. And I think Oregon had 5 players with that stat. I think Ohio State had like 2 or 3. And so you kind of go down the list and you're like, Alabama had like 2. So you look at the amount of weapons Texas has to feed and the fact that they're contributing the way they are. It's a pretty welcoming sign. It's pretty fun to see. So let's go ahead and get into this episode. Jake, Kentucky at number 3, Texas by the numbers. Jake, this Kentucky team is all defense. We talked about it a little bit before we came on. They kind of remind us and how they're structured as a little bit like in Oklahoma. It's not surprising that they're run by Stoops, but they are a defensive team. And they have a top 30 defense in the country. They're a real threat. They're a challenge on that side of the ball. And the 3 best games that they've played have come against the best competition that they've played all season, against Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. Against Georgia, they only allowed 13 points. Against Ole Miss, they only allowed 17 points. Tennessee was a little bit of a drop-off. They allowed 28 points, over 400, nearly 500 total yards, and 29 first downs against Tennessee. So it wasn't their best performance, but they did play very well in those games against the top opponents.
Yeah, I mean, their best games to come. There's a stat I actually pulled up today while I had a little time during lunch, and that is Kentucky is 3-0 against the spread and 1-2 record wise against SEC playoff contenders, as you just mentioned, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee. The combined score of those games is 58-50. But they're 0-4 against all other SEC opponents, including getting absolutely blown out by South Carolina and Florida. So they've been a very weird team where it's like if they played like they did against those top teams, you would think they would have had some more wins. Earlier on in the season, we were like, wow, this Kentucky team might be maybe ranked by the time it comes to Austin, just based off how they were starting to look like they were building, and then it fell apart. But they're still, I mean, they are a very capable team. They show fight in every game they play in. And I'm sure they're going to have a sound game plan coming into this one, especially defensively. And they're one of the best first quarter defensive teams in the country, which I'm very curious to see if Texas can. They haven't exactly been the best first quarter offense. And so I think that's going to be really key to watch, because if you can get this Kentucky team behind on the scoreboard early on, I think it completely changes the game flow and would allow Texas to run away with it early. If you let them hang in it early, they've shown that they can bring the fight for 4 quarters.
Yeah, obviously you can see on the bottom of your screen kind of where they rank in terms of red zone defense, first downs allowed, things like that, major categories that are kept. They're top 30 in the majority of categories. Now, they don't necessarily rush the passer great. They're 45th in sacks with 23 on the season, but Texas has the number 18th overall defense against the 29th total defense. Texas has the number 18th ranked total offense against the number 29 total defense. And so I think that matchup is going to be really interesting, actually. I think I find it very intriguing as to how Texas is going to run their offense against this defense that is very stout. Now, they are 71st on third down defense, so that's where Texas also struggles on offense, so something maybe gives there. But they're -3 in the turnover margin, and they're 4-0 when winning the turnover battle, Jake. They're 0-6 when losing the turnover battle. Very similar to something that we saw last week against Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean that turnover margin is just, it's essential for football. But there's certain teams who just really thrive off of it, and typically that's defensive teams. And Texas is that this year. As we've talked about, their identity is a defensive first team. They just happen to have a pretty good offense that can play great at times to go along with it. But that turnover, I mean, this defense has been, I think they still lead the SEC in interceptions right now. Obviously they've done a good job forcing fumbles as well. Alfred Collins had the huge strips fumble in the last game. And so continuing to add footballs to those swords is going to be really important in this game. And then not having some of those turnovers that we've seen plague the Texas offense. Because for as many turnovers as the defense is forced, the overall turnover margin on the year is probably not as good as it should be for Texas. And I'm sure Sarkisian would be the first to be upset about how many times the offense has turned over the ball this year. And these last 2 games against 2 very good defensive teams, it's going to be pivotal for the offense to take care of the ball. They did that against Arkansas, but both of these last 2 opponents are much better defenses. But at the same time, we've seen this Texas offense light up some good defenses, because say what you want about their schedule, I think it's pretty unquestionable that Texas has played against some very good defenses throughout this season.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And some good news for Coach PK, that side of the ball, and for Texas fans. This Kentucky team has had multiple turnovers in the last 5 games, and they've had 12 in the last 5 games. Last game, they had less than 2 turnovers. Was in their last win against Ole Miss. Well, they won last week, but in their last SEC win, their only SEC win was against Ole Miss, where they did not turn over the ball at all. So in the last 5 games, they have had multiple turnovers. So you know that defense side of the ball, their mouth is watering. They know what their task is at hand, and that is attack the football, be ball hawks, create some plays on that side of the ball for Texas.
Yeah, I mean, it's another one of those games. It feels like early in the season again, where the game plan is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I mean, defensively, you stop the run. That is going to be the first thing that comes to mind, is just not allowing them to be ahead of the chains, because Kentucky really struggles when they're not. And then on offense, it's just going to be not shooting themselves in the foot, avoiding penalties, avoiding turnovers, and doing what they do well. They need to run the ball consistent in this game, and they need Quinn to play confident. And when he plays confident, it seems like the offense gets rolling.
Well, and I like that you mentioned the running game, Jake, because that is the one maybe weaker spot of this Kentucky defense, is that their pass defense is 28th in the country. Their rush defense is 54th, and they've allowed 14 rushing touchdowns. They allow about 133 yards per game, which Texas's running backs are more than capable of a duo attack of getting those numbers. But if Texas consistently runs the ball and establishes themselves on the ground game, then like they did against a Michigan, like they did against an Oklahoma in this game, I could see Texas rolling early and often.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Kentucky's games against the other top contenders, and the games that were the closest, which was the Georgia game and then the win against Ole Miss, obviously, they held those teams in check in the run game. Georgia averaged 3.4 yards per carry. Ole Miss averaged just 3.2. And then Tennessee averaged 4.2, but their lead back, Dylan Sampson, who had 27 carries in that game, he was averaging over 5 a pop.
Yeah.
So Tennessee was successful in the run game, and they were the one team who at least had this game. They were trailing at halftime, but they kind of put it away in the third quarter, and you knew they were going to win it once the fourth quarter hit. And so that is kind of the recipe, right? When Kentucky's had a lot of success and done well against some of these better teams, it's been because they've stopped the run and then they can lean on that stout passing defense. And so this is going to be one of those weeks where even when Texas's run game has looked good, I feel like their first half running game has been pretty bad all season long.
We haven't seen a lot. Yeah.
A lot of the good runs have come in the second half. And also a lot of the good runs have been just pure scheme, just tricking the defense, misdirecting the defense. A lot of the run game has been created by Sarkisian, and the offensive line has, they've been very good this year. Great at times, but the run blocking has been disappointing. I would say to a point, though. Some of that goes with the running backs as well. Right. You're running guys you weren't really expecting to be getting all the carries this year.
Well, also, Jake, what are some of the best runs that we've seen from Texas's offense this year? I can
wide receivers:
Ryan Wingo, Isaiah Bond, and Arch Manning. Those are some of the best runs that we've seen from the Texas offense this year. And some of the biggest runs came from wide receivers and the backup quarterback. And so that is an issue. That is something that needs to be, and that's been all season long. I mean, we got 2 games left in the regular season. So if there's a game where the running backs are going to pop off, this one and next week is going to be vital. And this last stretch going into the postseason will be crucial if Texas can establish some sort of reminiscence of a somewhat dominant run game. Jake, let's go ahead, flip sides of the ball real quick. For everything Kentucky is good at on defense, they struggle on offense doing. They're not a very good passing team. They run the ball pretty well, but again, this offense, if they have success, it is through the ground game, and they have to lean on that to have any type of success, because in those games that we mentioned before in Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee, they won the time of possession in all 3 of those games.
Yeah, you can kind of see it in the SEC. There's a trend, right? The teams who grind out wins, when they grind out those wins, they always own the time of possession. And Texas has done a pretty good job of mitigating that against those teams. Against Vanderbilt, who was definitely a time of possession team. We talked about that Alabama game where they held Alabama to 18 minutes of possession time. And you look at Kentucky, and that's been one of their formulas to success is they know their offense isn't very good, but it doesn't really matter if you don't score that many points if you limit the amount of drives in the game. And by doing that, a drive can be successful if you just do what Mississippi State did on their opening drive against Texas, where you take up half the quarter. And then I think they scored a field goal on that, but maybe not. And even if you only get 3 points on the board, if you just took up half a quarter, you've just taken away 2 to 3 possessions from the Texas offense. And the Texas offense has been, as we just mentioned, one of those offenses that takes a little bit of time to get going this year for the most part. And so that is when Texas has done well in the time of possession battle, they typically won big. And then against teams that thrive on time of possession, Texas has been able to mitigate that, whether that be Arkansas or Vanderbilt. And this is going to be another one of those games. And next week too, because A&M can do that as well. It's going to be key in these last 2 games.
No, you're exactly right, Jake. And it's going to be something that Texas's offense is going to have to basically be kind of the difference maker, because I think the defense is going to show up and play the way the defense has shown up. It really all depends on if this Texas offense can not hurt the team. They play complementary football by not committing penalties, and they stay ahead of the chains, and they don't commit turnovers by shooting themselves in the foot. And they can, even if they just control the clock, and not every possession has to end in a touchdown. Not every possession has to end in in points or a field goal. Just don't go 3 and out and punt the ball away and give up the field position battle. If you win the field position battle and you give your defense an opportunity to make plays and stops, I trust that the defense will do that.
Yeah, and with that, watching Kentucky, one thing that stood out, their offense runs at a snail's pace. And if I was Texas, and we've started to see them do more of this, especially when Sarkisian feels like they get a little bit of rhythm, they all of a sudden they go fast, they go tempo on offense, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happened in this game, because when Kentucky has the ball, I mean, it's like a 1960s style that they're just gonna take their time, huddle up,
It's the
and
only
really
success that
try
they
to
can
run the
have.
clock.
Yeah, it's
And
the only success that they can have is to win the time of possession, maybe get a couple of first downs and waste 10 minutes off the clock.
yeah, I mean, it's like I mentioned just a little bit ago. If they have a drive that takes up 6 minutes and they don't score a single point, or they only get a field goal,
That's a win.
That's a win for them in this game, because it's going to take the crowd out of it. It's going to grind out the defense, and then that allows you to maybe put up some points later on in the game when they're a little bit worn down. And so it's going to be important for the offense to stay on the field when they do get their possessions, and then for the defense not allowing them to grind that out, which the defense has been pretty damn good at that all year, obviously.
All right, Jake, let's go ahead and switch tempo a little bit. Let's go ahead and get into our keys to victory now that we've kind of diagnosed and delve into what Kentucky is good at, their strengths, their weaknesses, how Texas matches up against them. Our keys to victory, Jake, I'll go ahead and give you my 3 real quick, and then we'll jump over to yours. But mine is win the turnover battle. We've seen it. They're 4-0 when they win the turnover battle. They're 0-6 when they don't win the turnover battle. Not one game this season have they tied the turnover battle. They've never had that. So we don't know what happens if they tie the turnover battle, but they're 0-6 when they lose the turnover battle. So first key to victory, win that. You set yourself up for success pretty well. Also running the ball offensively, whoever the primary running back is going to be for Texas, whether that's Jaden Blue, whether that's Jarrett Gibson, whether that's Trey Wisner, whoever that is, whether it's a wide receiver, I sure hope that's not to the point that we get to. They have to run the ball, and they have to make plays doing that in the ground game to have success. And then defense, just defense. Defense, just defense. Just do what you've done all year long. You'll be fine, and you'll have success against this Kentucky team.
Yeah, I think it's just before I jump into mine, I think it's a bit of an advantage for Texas that this game falls on Senior Day, just because I think that allows the focus to truly be at the task at hand, rather than be looking ahead to A&M next week like Elko is, since he said it in his press conference.
Hey, their full focus is on Texas. I mean, Auburn.
That, even though that probably was just an honest mistake, like he truly didn't mean to do that. That's funny.
The reporter asked him. Funny. The reporter asked him about Texas. He said, "No, we're not focused on Texas. We're focused on Texas. I mean Auburn." And it obviously was just a slip of the tongue, but still, objectively, even if you're an A&M fan, it's kind of funny. Like, come on, like have a little.
It's our job as Texas fans and as Texas podcasters to make fun of that. But
speaking of the coaching situation, just real quick, how strange of a situation was it that Mark Stoops was going to be the head coach at A&M? And now he had already kind of put in his notice at Kentucky whenever the news was announced. He was on a plane to College Station whenever they said, yeah, not going to happen. Turned that plane around, landed back in Lexington and said, I'm back.
I'll give it to A&M fans. That's the greatest moment in 12th man history, because they caused him not to get hired. Yeah. And even though I do respect Mark Stoops, Elko is a much better fit for that program. And as you've seen this year, he actually has them playing a real brand of football, which is not something we've seen from A&M. But just on that point, that's probably A&M's biggest influence as a 12th man they've ever made on anything A&M related.
Yeah, football related. Yeah.
So my keys to the game are just going to be find rhythm on offense. I mean, in that Arkansas game, I looked over on the drive that they scored, the second or third possession of the game. I looked over to my uncle as they were like on their third or fourth play of the possession. I was like, they're scoring a touchdown this drive. You can feel it when this offense is in rhythm. And when they're in rhythm, there's no stopping them. But when they're not in rhythm, it obviously can look ugly. So I want to see that rhythm and more possessions in this game. I want to see domination on the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. This is always one of my keys. I slip it in there one way or another. I'm just putting it right out there in this game. And to me, that is I would love to see this be a game where the run game sets up the pass. It's always been pass set up the run. I'd really like to see the run game set up the pass in this game.
Question. Since we're a regional podcast, if this was something like Texas scoring 24 points, 27 points, but it was a kind of a slower tempo, but they asserted themselves in the running game, and that never really felt out of doubt, and they just felt like they just asserted themselves in the run game, but they didn't score that many points. Would it still feel like a good win for Texas? I mean, everyone feels like a good win, but
I was going to say a win will feel like a good win to me, but especially at this point in the season. But yeah, I mean,
it's not flashy and not 40 points.
If they get if they get like 6 possessions total in this game, and which is a possibility, but it's because they're running the clock, they're doing what Kentucky wants to do, and it's going the other way. Yeah, I mean, not all 24-point games are created equally. Not all 27-point games are created equally. Just like Texas's 20-point game against Arkansas was an ugly 20-point game because they did get enough possessions. They could have less possessions in this game and score more points than they did against Arkansas. So it just depends on the game state and how it's going. I think it's pretty obvious when the offense plays well versus when they don't. But to answer your question, yes, it could still feel. I mean, if they win 27-3, 24-3, or 24-zip, yeah, I'm going to feel pretty damn good after the game.
Yeah. Anyway, finish out your keys to victory.
Yeah, which kind of is a good point for my last point, and this has been brought up by Sarkisian all year. Complementary football. Defense gets a turnover, score a touchdown with it. Defense gets you good field position, score a touchdown with it. Offense flips the field possession, defense get a 3 and out. Get a turnover deep in their territory. Just make plays and then complement that on the other side of the football, or even with special teams. I keep thinking that sooner or later, Bolden's not going to give me a heart attack and give me a cheer by scoring a touchdown.
He's pretty scary whenever he returns the ball, and not in necessarily the best way. He's scary more so for Texas fans. Dude, that return at Arkansas, what are you doing grabbing the ball at the 1-yard line with one hand? And he made something happen with it, but my God, that was scary.
I threw my hat off on that one in the stands. That was a hat throw. Like right when he grabbed it, I was like, what the just bam.
Yeah, no, that was scary for a lot of Texas fans. He's a heart attack waiting to happen, sometimes in a good way, but a lot of the times it feels like it's in a bad way. So Jake, anything else on keys to victory? We got about 3 minutes left. We can move into predictions.
I think it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to kind of expand on a little bit in the final prediction of how I do expect this game to go. But the keys to victory for this Texas team have been pretty clear all year. I think we really know what this team is now. It's just more of figuring out, is the offense going to find a groove as we come to the end of the season?
For sure. All right, Jake, final predictions. Now, the way we do predictions, we don't just give you a score and just call it as it is. We also kind of go over the spread a little bit, and we will go over under. But Jake, first of all, we also like to do some prop bets, if you will, or predictions that happen in game, whether that be individual players, as a team achievement, whatever that looks like. I've got the defense getting 4 turnovers in this game. Now, they may not result in touchdowns. Texas has 1 defensive touchdown all year. With the amount of turnovers that they have, that's a little strange to me. I feel like that number should be higher, but 1 touchdown, it came from Ethan Burke, baby. So at the end of that UTSA game, I believe. And so with the amount of interceptions that Akuba has and the amount of interceptions that John A. Barron has, I would think there'd be 1 return for a touchdown, but I think they add to the turnover battle, and they get 4 turnovers in this game. And I think Texas runs for $175 and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Or did you say your score?
I did not give the score. I'm going to let you go ahead and give your,
okay. I'll go with
in-game predictions and kind of how this game's going to go.
Okay. I feel like you switched it up on me, but I'll let it go. So I think the offense is going to have a really good game. I think when the offense has a bad game, they typically do a good job of rebounding in the following game. And so I think they're going to get over 400 yards in this game total, which would be very good against a good defense. And I think they're going to get right around 200 yards on the ground. And what my bolder prediction is, I think Blue really takes over as running back one, starting with this game, assuming he's healthy. I know he was in that sling. Sarkisian said it was precautionary. So we'll have to see if he's healthy. But if he's healthy, I think this is where he asserts himself as what we kind of expected him to be going in the season, and has kind of been hampered by nagging injuries throughout the year. I do think Kentucky keeps this close very early on. I think the first quarter might be a little ugly. It just feels like at this point, you are what the data says you are to a point, and Kentucky is a very good first quarter defense. They've been one of the best in the country. Texas, not so much on the offensive end. So I think this is close, but I think this is one of those games where Texas pulls away and all of a sudden flips all the momentum right before halftime and then comes out and puts it away in the third quarter.
Yeah, and Jake, the line is Texas 20 and a half point favorites. I actually think that's somewhat fair. And then the over-under set at 46 and a half. And Jake, my final prediction score, I'll go ahead and give it. I think it's 27-3 Texas wins this game. I think it'll be a very similar game to what you said. I think Kentucky keeps it close. I think it's fairly low scoring in the first half. Texas fans will be all over social media freaking out. I'm kind of expecting a lower scoring, kind of knockout, drag out first half. I think Texas gets some points late in the game, wins 27-3. That means they cover the spread, but they also hit the under from that 46 and a half.
Yeah, I love the under in this game because I think it's going to be on Texas to score most of those points.
Yeah.
I find it hard to imagine Kentucky's offense scoring many points on this defense.
Agreed.
The defense has been consistent every game this season.
More than 10 points would be what's the over under on 10 or more points for Kentucky? I mean,
if you were putting Kentucky's like point total, I think you would have to put it at like 8.5.
Yeah.
For this game. I mean, Texas is giving up like 10.5 points a game.
Yeah.
So just do the math there with how Kentucky's offense is. And I don't think they're going to get the over on what I just said. I have Texas winning this game 31-6. I think the offense, and I think that's going to be one of those 31 points where it's like, wow, the offense played really, really well. Maybe they had a drive or two where they stalled themselves out with a big negative play or penalty. Or have one turnover or something like that. But it's going to be one of those games where it's going to be like almost every time they had the ball, they drove down and got some type of points out of it.
Nice. Well, Jake, that's going to do it for today's episode. Again, that is our prediction episode. Tomorrow's episode for Friday's episode, I should say, we're going to do an immediate reaction on the Texas basketball game, Texas versus Syracuse. And I think that'll be a big one. Enough people are going to be paying attention to it to where we can do an immediate reaction. A lot of people seem to like our immediate reaction episodes. Again, we'll discuss whether or not we want to release that episode at night and how we feel about doing it around the league, or maybe we combine the two. Maybe that game for Texas Syracuse isn't something we want to talk 30 minutes about. Maybe we talk about it for 20 minutes, and then we give some predictions on the games this Saturday around the league and around the country. Maybe we do something along those lines and release it to you on Friday at noon. But anyway, typically these episodes Tuesday through Friday release at noon each and every day. Saturdays, we give you our immediate reactions on the Texas football game. Again, like, share, subscribe, keep interacting with the show. We appreciate it. We love it. We thank you for the support. We continue to grow. We continue to give you great content. And if there's something that you want us to discuss or someone you want us to interview that we can reach out to, we will gladly do that for you. For Jacob Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. This is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on Rogue Sports Network. Hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.